Yeah, I asked him to knock it off, but the people on the chat are so pro-pillage at this point.
What?
Welcome to Decoding TV's review of Jesse Armstrong's latest movie on HBO, Mountainhead. Jesse Armstrong, of course, the creator of Succession, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. Probably like top 10 is my guess. Patrick Klepek, do you agree? What do you think?
A great show that I've watched half of and then feel real bad that I didn't watch the second half. Not for any good reason. Like when every time the Apple TV scrolls over, it's like, do you want to pick up season 3, episode 3? I do. But then I'm always perpetually behind on something else. But tremendous
Damn,
show.
dude.
I know. I hate.
I'm the opposite, where I have literally seen the entire show like through its entire run, probably like 2 to 3 or maybe even 4 times. Like I'm hardcore fan of Succession. Obviously, we covered it here on Decoding TV as well. So, but we're both Jesse Armstrong fans, and he decided to make a movie about some tech billionaires and what happens when they all get together. So we're going to talk about what we thought about the film. First, I'm going to read a fairly detailed plot summary from Wikipedia. So strap in. 4 wealthy friends meet for a retreat amidst a growing global upheaval caused by AI-generated disinformation, produced and disseminated via fictional social media platform Tram. Among them are Venice Van Parish, owner of Tram, Jeff Aberdazzi, owner of Builter, a fictional company specializing in AI, Randall Garrett, an older member and mentor of the group who has recently received an incurable cancer diagnosis, and Hugo Super Van Yalk, who, despite his $521 million net worth, is still significantly less wealthy than his multi-billionaire friends. The retreat takes place at Super's new remote mountain home dubbed Mountainhead. Though the gathering is ostensibly an opportunity for the 4 men to reconnect as friends without the interference of their usual business concerns, all 4 of them have their own ulterior motives. Then, having fast-tracked new features to Tram that enable the disinformation to spread, wishes to acquire Builter for its fact-checking technology to avoid rescinding the new features and taking accountability. Randall wishes to see Tram continue to grow and progress, believing Ven's ventures could lead to a transhumanist solution for his illness. Jeff sees his net worth skyrocket as the turmoil worsens due to Builter's fact-checking abilities and does not want his company subsumed into Tram. And Super, feeling inferior for never having made $1 billion, wishes to petition the others to invest in Slowzo, his concept for a lifestyle super app. End quote. Patrick Klepek. We've been doing this podcast together for a little over a year now. I've been very grateful for every episode we do together. And we've gotten to the point where I think you and I are getting pretty good at predicting whether the other person's going to like something. And sometimes you'll watch something and be like, oh, Dave Chen's not going to like that. And I was watching Mountainhead and I was thinking to myself, at least for the first half and possibly even the second half, I don't know if Patrick Klepek's going to like this. So Patrick Klepek, what did you ultimately think of Mountainhead?
David, one of the talking points about in the press about this movie has been that, Jesse Armstrong came up with the idea, pitched it, wrote it, shot it, and it came out in less than a year. And boy, can you tell. I did not. I had originally pitched my wife like, hey, we watched that trailer like for this Mountainhead, like Jason Schwartz, like a lot of actors you like. Do you want to watch? She's like, yeah. I'm gonna finish putting one of the kids to bed and and I'll come watch it with you. It's like, okay. Well, she fell asleep, and sometimes she wants me to wake her up. Like, don't let me. I didn't mean to fall asleep. I watched 20 minutes of this. I was like, nope, get those extra hours of sleep in. Like, I don't think you need to get up for this one, which is funny because I like the first half of this movie. And I think the second half is bizarre, disappointing, aimless. I didn't know what this movie was trying to say. I can surmise some points it's trying to make, but I don't think it added up to very much. I didn't find it that funny. Mostly just felt like a reason for a bunch of really interesting actors to hang out at some cool sets. It did not work for me. And I found it, even though I didn't finish Succession, I find it a profound disappointment relative to Armstrong's previous work. This feels incomplete by the time I got to the end of it. And was like, well, I can't wait for the next episode where, the point picks up. But unfortunately, it's a movie and it was all over.
Well, I'm really sorry to hear that, obviously. And but I appreciate you watching the movie and joining me to talk about it, joining me to talk about it today on Decoding TV. Regardless, I liked the movie overall. However, I do think the first half is pretty slow. You talked about the accelerated production schedule of the movie, and I think one of the reasons is because he was worried it would become outdated because like
Yeah.
the world is moving so quickly, right? That you're satirizing one person and then maybe their relevance is completely faded and there's another person that's like the hot thing and then your thing seems hopelessly out of date. And so I think they finished principal photography like less than 2 months ago, if I understand correctly. Like they really got this out the door very quickly, and I do think it is very topical. uh Here are some things I liked about it. Okay, first, and we're going to share overall thoughts and then we'll
Sure.
talk about spoilers. But the primary thing that I think this movie accomplishes is it helps you understand the amorality and just overall bizarre belief systems that a lot of these billionaire tech bros actually subscribe to. And I actually think that's really useful because if you think about it, the way a lot of tech billionaires are portrayed, at least until the last few years, in my opinion, has been largely in glowing visionary style terms, right? Where people are like, oh, this guy is so altruistic. He's trying to usher in the future. This guy wants to bring us to Mars. Oh, there's a future where we're all in the cloud. Our brains are in the cloud. And isn't that amazing? Like AGI and the idea is like, oh, these people are so smart. And not only that, they know where humanity is going and they want to help get us there. And like, how can we not support that? And so for most of my life, that has been the tone of the coverage in the media, has been like, these guys are awesome and like they're so, and at worst it was they're kind of nerdy, neurodivergent, people that are like wouldn't fit in well in social situations necessarily, but like that's like at worst, like for most of my life. And most of the time it's like these people are awesome and amazing and like we're lucky to have them around. What Mountainhead illustrates is, what if we're not, right? What if they actually don't give a shit about any of us? All they seek is to enrich their own bottom line, and they're willing to subject hundreds, thousands, millions of people to suffering and death if it means that they can benefit a little bit from that. That's kind of one of the messages of Mountainhead. I think that's very useful. That's very useful for people to see. Now, are those people who need to see that going to watch this movie? I don't know, right? Probably not. But it's nice to have media out there that makes that point. I do think, on that note, it also offers like some specific flavor of the bizarreness of some of the stuff that these people do. Like these characters, Ven, Randall, Jeff, and Soups, they are not based off of specific individuals, but they are a combination of specific individuals. I would say, for instance, Venus or Ven Parrish is a combination of Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Like he has the social network, and the thing is, I've recently read the book about Facebook, the Careless People book, about Mark Zuckerberg, and it really illustrates kind of how these people think, which is, people think that there's like a master plan. These people are playing 5D chess, that they're unlocking human potential. But for many of these people, there's nothing underneath. There's no deeper layer. It's just, hey, I launched this thing because it was freaking cool, man. And isn't that cool? And we got to connect people, and that's cool. And like that in itself is the value. And they don't think about the second order consequence. They don't think about like what the downstream impact of what their actions are going to be. And I think this movie really like brings that to light. So I do think there's a lot of value in the movie, and separately, I think at times the movie is very, very funny. And in particular, I thought the second half was very Monty Python-esque in a way that felt somewhat believable to me. So anyway, those are my overall thoughts. I think it's valuable. I think it's incisive. I think it's trenchant. I think it's funny. And so overall, I like the movie. First hour is super slow. Like the whole movie.
I liked that first hour though. Like that,
really,
like, when it made the Monty Python like the comedic pivot in the second half.
Yeah.
That's kind of where it fell apart for me, because like, okay, well, this is going to be this movie. Then I wish it just been that movie. But at least the first movie, I felt like its commentary and interweaving of like what is happening in the world and the consequences that these folks and the technology they're building have, like it felt like it's most insightful and interesting, and their indifferences, their pettiness, they're really just not that different than you and I. Like the pedestal that like we've created, like is very wobbly. Like they're idiots just like you and I. They just happen to be like put on these pedestals. And I think the first parts of this, the first hour, as slow as it is, I found that that to be more interesting. But then once we move over to, should we, take out, one of the guys to try and increase our slice of the pot, I found it funny. I just like, what happened to that first, like it leaves everything from the first half of the movie behind. Like it just feels like it leaves a lot of the commentary on where they intersect with society and the consequences of that behind, in favor of something much more slapstick. And it felt like the movie was like two movies with two halves that didn't, at least for me, go well together. And I would have actually just preferred one or the other. I felt like two lanes without, and it just didn't work for me overlapping.
That is definitely a valid point of view, Patrick. I actually kind of think the second half of the movie completes the commentary from the first half. One could argue. I mean, first I want to talk a little bit about one of the characters, Ven. I think Ven, to me, is probably the most compelling character, because I think he is the most close to those real life people that we know, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, right? There's this scene that Ven has where he's trying to connect with his baby, but it's like, Patrick, is that how you connect with your baby, by the way? You talk to him like an adult, you try to schedule time with him, right?
Yeah, we need to get Nathan Fielder on the case. Let get him into the rehearsal, see if he can figure out how to better act with this child.
This is like an advertisement for Nathan Fielder's The Rehearsal Season 1, but the before picture, before they've gone through Nathan Fielder's rehearsal process. And it's painful to watch, and it's also extremely similar to how Elon Musk kind of treats his child in some ways, right? Elon Musk's child is much older, but he brings his child to like everywhere, and you cannot imagine that child is having a normal or healthy upbringing, right?
No, it's a performative toy. Like you don't bring I forget how old X is, but it's a young boy. Like going to a UFC fight at like 11 at night, like that's not normal behavior.
Completely agree. But I also love the way that throughout Ven is talking about how his new AI tool, it's like, oh yeah, so some people, when movies came out, people ran away thinking a train was coming through the wall. Did we say no more movies? And that the way that this movie captures how Ven talks about Tram is literally how we mostly understand all the people at Facebook to understand Facebook. That there is no sense of responsibility to humanity. There's no sense of trying to prevent danger. It's just like, oh yeah, hey, I did some cool shit, and like connecting more people and people making cool stuff, and like, oh, isn't that so cool? And like that's as deep as it goes. And again, I think people need to see that. I don't know if the right people will see that, but I think people need to see that, and I think this illustrates that. So I actually thought the Ven stuff was the kind of the sharpest commentary in the actual movie itself.
Well, and I think there's a chance that people watch this, like there's some terms that I'm sure you're aware of, or people to keep up with, like accelerationists. I don't think is a term that is like people sitting around like it's not a common term that we use to describe these people, but like this era of Silicon Valley, all broadly speaking, subscribes to the accelerationist like method of thinking, which is like, what was Facebook's motto? Like, move fast and break things like that. Like accelerationism is that turned into ideology to be unleashed upon society, which is like, let the sectarian violence happen, because like those people just need to fight it out. Like who cares if it was because of the misinformation and all that.
Like,
so I think
technology is helping to unlock like what is like the purity of whatever people's actual emotions are, and let's just let it all play out. Like there's no need to try to prevent try to hold back people's worst impulses, right? Like
One could argue that if you wanted a little like a pairing, if Mountainhead is like swirling wine or like a nice glass of scotch or something like that, then just put on The Purge like right next to
Right.
this, because these
Yeah.
movies are actually very much in concert with one another in terms of like there's an accelerationism like ideology behind The Purge. Like,
Yeah.
it's like let people's worst impulses get
Right.
out, they'll get past it, and we'll also get rid of those pesky poor people, like, as well. You know what I mean? Like, so there is a, The Purge is an older film. I mean, there's been a bunch of those movies, and they're all broadly pretty good, even though there's ups and downs. But like, you could pair these two films together and actually like have a pretty interesting, like, one is like a hammer, and then the other is a little more subtle, but they're playing in the same sandbox of ideas for sure.
There is this amorality that pervades the whole thing, where they literally, at one point Ven asks the question, like, do other people even exist, right? Like, isn't it just us? We're the only people that really matter, right? Who cares if everyone out there is dying or whatever? Like, no one really matters. Which I think is accurate. I think it's accurately how these people think of us. But Patrick, why don't we talk about what actually happens in the second half? You've already alluded to it, which is at one point, Jeff Aberdazi, who's played by Rami Youssef, decides, hey, we should probably figure out a way to push Ven out of the company. We should stage a coup, get the board of directors to vote him out. Very Kendall Roy style machinations. And Steve Carell's character, who I think is kind of a Peter Thiel type, is kind of my sense, right, of who he's representing. He really does not like this, because he's really depending on Ven to get them post-human or post-transhumanist, so he can like transfer his consciousness into the cloud.
What's the diagnosis he's given at the beginning? I forget what his outlook was.
I believe he has cancer, and it's like the doctor said 5, 10, maybe 15 years, and he did not accept that. That by the way is another thing that I think this movie tries to illustrate, which is just how weird some of these people's beliefs are. They're like, oh, we can go transhuman. Like, I don't need to be in my body. Like, in 15 years, I won't need my body. Like, they believe things like that, which I don't think is necessarily like inherently wrong. But if you believe that with all of your heart and mind, it will cause you to behave in ways that are reckless and that may make present day worse for a lot of people.
Well, in projecting, and it's one thing of like, hi, I would like to invest, like, look into technology that could further human consciousness past like the frailty of the human body. Okay, great. Like, that might have some second and third order impacts on the rest of us in our in our meat bag bodies.
Yes.
But it's the subjecting the rest of the world.
Right.
Like, lots of us have like weird ideas or like things that are just for us, but like we don't have the ability to thrust that onto the rest of the world. And I think part of what this movie at its best illustrates is the callousness at which others in these extremely powerful positions project the weirdest parts of their personal beliefs onto everyone else. And well, we'll just see what happens.
So Steve Carell's character, Randall, is upset by this news and decides, hey, we need to take Jeff out.
That's really not even that hard. Humans are very fragile.
And when they say take Jeff out, they mean they discuss like how to remove him off the chessboard, but then they decide like we need to literally kill him. And I understand what happens afterward is very silly and slapstick. And again, it reminded me a lot of Monty Python. Mm-hmm. Of just like people getting up to these shenanigans and completely oblivious to how silly they look and sound. But I do think there's a germ of an important idea there, which is like they literally don't believe regular laws apply to them. Like they billionaires, if you look at Elon Musk's history of actions and how his actions relate to the law, he literally does not believe he needs to obey the law. Like, anytime somebody says the FTC, the SEC, whoever, is like, imagine if you had essentially unlimited money to hire lawyers and snarl any legal proceedings for years or decades. Like, you could literally do whatever you want. And so these people don't think the law applies to them. So I don't think it's that much of a stretch to believe that they would actually want to kill someone, right? And think that they could pull it off and suffer no consequences for it. And I think that Jeff, who is the target, and eventually understands what they're trying to do, I think he also understands that, and that's why the ending of the movie. So we're in full spoilers now. That's why at the end of the movie, it's kind of like no harm, no foul. It's like I'm hurt. My feelings are hurt, but like he's a lot less upset about it than I would be, Patrick Klepek. Let me put it that way, right? Like I would probably be like, I'm going to kill these guys back if they tried to kill me. He's like, you know what? I understand what you did. It was a strategic business decision, and also it was kind of funny. That's kind of how he reacts to it. So I actually liked how this played out. That said, Patrick Klepek, like it sounds like you did not like the second half, and is it because it was just so discordant with the first half in terms of like the tone, or what was your?
That's part of it. I also just wish it was funnier. Like it just didn't like land. Like I just found myself like kind of getting bored in some of the scenes with like a bunch of like several of these actors I'm not familiar with, but like just bouncing off one. I don't know. It's just like not enough of it worked. And I understand like the aim, which is like if you like sit back and look at the movie more big picture, it's like, okay, so they can get out and spout all this like bullshit about this tech they're building and how they're changing the world. But when just three of these guys get in a room together and all they got to do is kill one person, not that hard, like maybe morally hard, ethically hard to an average person, but like they should be able to accomplish like just doing this thing. They're not able to. And like the hapless nature of their ability to actually pull off this like goofy little plot is in the bigger picture, like a commentary on how not serious you should take them about the other stuff that they talk about. Like if they can't just kill one of their friends, then like how can you possibly like it uses the absurdity of like the like inability to like push him off of like the top of the stairs, which like they had that guy dead to rights. Like boom, like they can't do it in the same way that they can't do anything else, should not be trusted to do anything else, and anything that comes out of their mouths like should be taken with a grain of salt. And I can see that. I guess it just once we took the pivot, I lost a little bit of the commentary from the first half and kind of just wanted the second half to be like the jokes just didn't land for me as hard as I wanted to. But I see like it wasn't hard for me to see the threads it was trying to pull on. I just don't think the jokes landed for me as much as I was hoping.
I'm sorry to hear that. I had a blast. I thought the part where they're trying to kill him with a bowling ball was very funny, and
that was probably the like the tension of like in my head. If Steve Carell multiple times like getting up like on this bed to drop this bowling ball on this guy's head, I'm like, there's nothing about this movie that suggests they're actually going to let this happen. But as I conceive in my mind, the idea of a bowling ball smashing my head in, like it's probably not going to kill him. It's probably going to hurt him real bad. Like this is upsetting. So every time you let the ball loose, it's probably the best joke in
right.
Like,
but he drops it on his midsection. He drops it on his midsection, and it's not doing enough damage. Is the joke that occurs? So
it was good. That's probably my favorite. Other than watching them try to push gasoline like underneath a sauna door. That was it was a good bit.
I liked the part where Rami Youssef's character shows up the next morning and is like, I really actually loved you guys. Like, and what's funny about that is also Rami Youssef's character treats all the other guys largely with contempt throughout most of the day. Like he gets in fights with Ven the whole time, and he's kind of like razzing Soups for his like he thinks the house looks ugly as sin. He's like mean to everyone. And then at the end, he's like, "Oh, like I actually got you guys some really nice gifts, like because I love you guys." And I think it shows you just how broken these people are, and they're how they
incapable of basic social human interactions.
They don't know how to like relate to other people, right? Like, there was this story in that Careless People book that I thought was very interesting about how basically when Mark Zuckerberg plays games with his like board games like Settlers of Catan with his employees all let him win, and he doesn't realize that that's the case. And I just thought that was like a very fascinating insight into kind of what the dynamic is.
Treating him like I treat my toddler.
I'm a little bit bummed we didn't get more of that. So like a poker game was promised, Patrick Klepek, and we never saw the poker game. So that was a little bit sad.
It feels like it was shot and like not included. Like they talked about it so like, I don't know if you felt this way, but it felt like a movie that was discovered in some ways, like in the editing, because oftentimes like we're in another part of the house and we're talking, how do we get there? Like many times, like this is a pretty it's a pretty sprawling sort of, not quite an estate, but like it's a
Right.
big ass house. It's got, spiral staircases that go up multiple floors. There's an elevator, there's a bowling alley, private movie theater, all that sort of stuff. And yet, like many, many times throughout the film, we'd cut to, well, these three guys are over here while someone else is in a different part of the house. I'm like, how much time has passed? Why did they get separated? Like the movie kind of disconnects you from the rhythm of the day and like time, and maybe because I don't know, but I found that odd over and over where I felt disconnected from a passage of time.
Yeah.
In the
There's
film.
no like transition scenes in the movie,
No.
right? It's kind of like it's very similar to like a play. It's very similar to just
that's a good
you
point.
watch a scene and then you watch another scene of dialogue and then you watch another scene of dialogue. It's very similar, yeah. But Patrick, I did really appreciate the final moments of the movie where Ven and Jeff talk, and they kind of bury the hatchet, and they're like, hey, like I guess we might work together. And then there's this moment where Steve Carell's character like turns around and looks behind, and he's like, hey, what's going on back there? And it's because you can't trust anyone. Like if you're in this circle of people, you cannot trust anyone else. And he's like, yes, today it was me trying to drop a bowling ball on Rami Youssef's head, but maybe tomorrow I'm the one who's going to get the bowling ball dropped on his head, right? And there's this kind of you're always worried about it. So I appreciate that I captured that. I also loved that Soups had this app called Slozo, which is just a horrible, horrible name for a meditation / lifestyle super app. I just thought that was delightful. So, but anyway, the movie is an accurate depiction of how billionaires think, how they relate to each other, and how they think about us. And I appreciate that it's out there. I did see one comparison to this movie as like comparing it to Don't Look Up, which is a movie I despise. Did you ever see that movie?
I did. I didn't loathe it. And I think loathing is not an. Would that be an accurate way to describe how you felt about Don't Look Up? Yes.
And pretty much everything Adam McKay does, which I know Adam McKay directed the first episode of Succession, but like, I just, it is to me an extremely lazy form of satire.
Adam McKay is one of those where I like his name when he will be restrained, right? Like Don't Look Up is like the full McKay. Like it is just like clearly he has full control over everything that's happening. Succession, like he's really an electric like filmmaker. I think like when he is good, he is really good. Don't Look Up was like I could pull like a handful of things. Like I had a good time. I don't know if I'd call it a good movie, because he gets really interesting performances out of people, and I respect that he's unabashed about like inserting his full politics in. Like there's no subtlety about his work, but that doesn't always translate to entertainment.
I think the critique of this is that it could be similar. It's just like we're just kind of gawking and pointing at these tech billionaires and like. In a very obvious way. It's like look at it, the kind of thing that's undergirding the whole thing is like, can you believe this guy? Like the whole movie, you can get a sense of like, can you believe this guy? Like that's the whole movie kind of in some ways.
Yeah, I just wish there was a little more there. Like,
right.
Again, that's why I got to the end. I was like, oh, this would have been a cool pilot for a television show. And I just felt it lacked. Like a movie is different than an episode of TV.
Yeah.
And if I had just watched an episode of TV, but like, okay, like I'm interested to see what happens in this world with these characters. I think as on its own as a film, I think Don't Look Up is a pretty unflattering, unfair comparison. I don't think those are operating in different, certainly different tones for sure. But I do agree with the idea that there's a lack of
satire
substance.
Is not deep enough.
It's not deep enough. Like I think it's very shallow. And I think part of that's exactly what you were talking about. Like to get a movie out that is that topical that quickly, I think you have to sacrifice something along the way. And I think this movie ends up sacrificing. I think it wants to be specific, but also has to restrain itself in its specificity. And I think that ends up really hurting how it feels. It might help it stand the test of time because the lack of specificity will maybe prevent it from aging too rapidly. But in this current moment, I felt like I wish there was just a little bit more there.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.